Well, it's a Sunday morning here, and I think I've got a little time to dive into this a little deeper. And so I think that today I'm going to start the push to get this old girl running again. As you can see, I've finished the cleaning and refurbishment of the interior. We've got a couple videos on that came out really well. I've washed the car extremely well on the outside, but I have not buffed or polished it or anything yet. I'm still very nervous about that. But I am ready to jump into this. And I have not messed around with this much other than I did clean out this oil cleaner last year and I put some Marvel Mystery Oil in the cylinders. I actually did take the carburetors off one day to start this, but I'm so afraid of having this car fall into the trap of so many others where you take the car all apart and then it just sits forever apart. I want to keep this intact. But it's time to go ahead and push forward. And so I know that the header tank leaks. I need to get this out of there. These are the original hoses from the factory, and they are probably going to crack and break, and we'll just do the best we can there. They probably need to be replaced anyway. I know that the header tank is full of holes in the bottom. I did an experiment one day to pour water in, and it came out the bottom as fast as it went in. So that is going to need to be pulled out and either repaired or replaced. I'm going to pull the carburetors off and rebuild them, and I will clean them. Not going to do some high polish or anything. I'm just going to keep this patina on, but I am going to clean the dirt off and some of the oil. So I'll go ahead and rebuild those on the inside. Going to need to... Okay, real quick, in that opening segment, I had said that I had had these off last year, but now that I'm looking at it closer, I'm remembering where things left off last year. I took the dash pots off and I pulled the pistons out with the needle on them, and that was as far as I got, and I was going to try to rebuild these in place without pulling them off the manifold and without taking all that linkage apart, by pulling the whole jet assembly out the bottom. See this down here. And, if it was any other car, I'd just pop these carburetors off and throw them on the bench and clean them up and rebuild them. And it may come to that. But for now, I think I'm going to continue on with that idea. So let's see how that goes. And maybe we can rebuild these by leaving the bodies in place. Okay, the dash pots are off. Everything came apart just perfectly. You can see things are pretty clean in here. There's a little oil and stuff. So that's not looking too bad. All right, now I'm going to try to take the whole jet assembly off from the bottom, and that's going to require me to take apart the choke linkage. I'm going to have to take this fuel line off, the tops of these fuel bowls, and then there's these little overflow tubes down there, and they're cinched together under there, so I'll have to do something with that. So I'm getting in a little deeper. But if I can not disturb all of these connections of the manifold and back here, that would be nice for originality's sake. So let's see if we can keep going. Okay, now the overflow tubes are off, and I haven't had to disconnect them from their little bracket down there on the oil filter housing. I've been able to just push them out of the way. And these two up front had a little red fiber washer underneath between the banjo fitting and the top of the fuel bowl, but this one here did not. That little washer was missing on that one. Okay, you can see now I've got the tops of the fuel bowls off. Everything looks pretty good in there. See, I'm able to move these out of the way. Floats look good. A little crusty down in that one. That's not too bad. And I've got the main fuel feed line off, obviously, and I've disconnected it back here at the sediment bowl. And I'm just gonna see if I can fish that out without breaking this joint down here, and also just being very careful with this original plastic line. It's still a little flexible. It's not real dry and brittle. I think it's gonna be fine, but I don't wanna over stress it. Okay, it's been about 2.5 hours and I've got it all apart now, and I was able to take the carburetors apart without removing them. So the bodies are still in there. I still got the throttle linkage, and that's, you know, maybe a little sticky, but that's all working fine. So we're gonna leave that. I've taken the fuel bowls off and the whole jet assemblies off. So come on over and I'll show you why I had to do that. You might be thinking, why don't we just throw some gas in here and give it a whirl? And believe me, I wanted to do that. But I know these cars too well, and here's what you're fighting with this. This is the fuel bowl that goes up under the carb, and then this is actually kind of a choke assembly that goes up in there. And I don't know, don't worry about that right now, how that fits. But this is the jet and the rubber jet diaphragm on there. And that goes up in here like this from the bottom. And then this jet will slide up and down. See, this is the piston and the needle. It goes in there like that, and then as this piston comes up and more air goes through, the tapered needle comes up, and I was telling my son here is behind the camera, it's like a little donut of gas coming through, and that little donut gets bigger and bigger, all right? Now, you also choke the carbs by pulling this little lever down like that, see? And yanking the jet downward, all right? Now, the problem is these things get put away with the choke on or maybe not. But see, this is the jet, and this is the jet diaphragm, which is rock hard, like a Bakelite almost. So it was in a very down position. If you go back in the video and look, you'll see these things were down in there. They're supposed to be flush. This is the new jet with the new diaphragm. And see how it's very flexible. And so when we put it in here, we're going to be, look, I can't even hardly get it in there now. It's going to be able to flex up and down like that. Are you getting that on film? Okay. See, that's what we're after. And you weren't getting that with this. Now, also, not only is this seized up that way, but if you come over here and look at this center carb, see these markings here on the jet tube? Get right down on there. I had to actually gently hammer this out of the sleeve that it rides in. It was stuck in there. You'll also note, here's the float on this one. This float is stuck too. Now, on film, let's give her a little tap. Yeah, I thought that might pop out, but she's not moving. So we're going to have to we've got some stuck floats, we've got stuck jets, we've got hardened up jet diaphragms. This stuff has to come apart and be fixed. Now you can see I've got it all laid out. I've got the screws exactly where they were. I've got everything all separated. I've managed to even save the original cotter pins from the choke linkage, and I think I'm going to be able to put them back in there. Here's that original fuel line. Come over here. Here's the choke linkage. There's the original cotter pin there. So just 2.5 hours of very careful, nerve-wracking work. And now we've just got to clean this all up without overdoing it and put it all back together. Okay, I've been at this for about an hour, and I've cleaned up all the components of the rear carb. And here's everything here. It's just been cleaned up. I started out using a little kerosene, but that just wasn't cutting it. So I needed some carb cleaner to cut through the just gunk on here. And so here's an example of the difference. Now, as you can see, I'm not polishing or anything like that. I'm just cleaning.
and just getting all the insides clean and the outside. And one thing, this little jar contains the pieces I'm not going to reuse, which is the jet, and the diaphragm, and the needle. And then you'll see that spring down there. It's broken in two pieces. That spring goes right in the bottom. Here's the float bowl here, and then it comes over here to feed the jet. And you can see where I had to scrape that a little bit and pry that broken piece of spring out. That is the see that? That is the very, very bottom of where your fuel is going to sit. And that's where the water is going to go. Sorry, water. I have a bit of an accent here. The water is going to go down there into the bottom, and it rusted away that little steel spring. So it'll be interesting to see if we see that same thing in the other carbs, but we do get new springs in our carb kit. I don't know where it is. Oh, here they are right here. There's the 3 new springs right there. So here's what I use, just some toothbrushes and some light brushes. This is something I just got at the grocery store for cleaning out reusable straws. And next you can see I'm kind of soaking this one here with the stuck float. And I've got some, see, I've got some little pans over there for each carb's gonna have its own little pan so things don't get mixed up. All right, so it looks like I got a couple more hours to go to clean the other 2. All right, this is what I'm talking about. I got that float out of here. That was no big deal at all. But then look at this spring in here. And again, this is where all that water has gone down into this lowest point here. And that's where it pulls up through on the jet. And so this is broken. But again, they do give you new springs. So we'll dig that out of there, get this all cleaned up. And you got to make sure that you've got this little channel here. There's a little channel hole here that goes across. You got to get that all cleaned out too. And that's what I've been using this little scrubber here for. All right, so let's get this all cleaned up. Okay, so real quick, I'm at the shop. This is that center carburetor bowl. I've got it all cleaned out. You can see I've picked all the rusted spring out of there, but there's still some residual, I guess, iron oxide rust in there, and I don't want that in there. I need to get that all out, because once it gets down into this bowl, see, this doesn't look too bad in here, and that little tube in there is clear too. But I don't want any little flakes coming off, because this is past the fuel filter, past the little cage screens in the fuel bowl where it goes in up here. This is it. So if a little flake comes off in there, it's going to jam the needle in the jet, and I'll have to take the whole thing back apart. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this a quick blast in the glass bead cabinet and get this all cleared out. And you can see I've got a layer of the low stick blue tape on there and then duct tape so I don't damage the patina on the outside of this. Let's see how this goes. Okay, I now have all 3 carburetors all cleaned up. And they are spotless, but still have the patina on them. See here, like this, for example. And I've already replaced the needle and seat here. I haven't decided if I'm going to leave this original gasket on or replace it. I might just leave the original on because it'll seal just fine. It'll give me that original look. And now I need to clean up the carburetor bodies over here. And so what I've done is put this piece of plastic in here. I'm going to put a little carb cleaner on a rag and just kind of wipe this the best I can. I'll probably use some simple green. I've got the plastic because I don't want the carb cleaner to damage any of the paint on the frame rails or the vacuum reservoir, anything like that. The paint quality on things like this and the vacuum reservoir and the mud shield is very low. So if you get some carb cleaner on that, it's going to take the paint off. So I'll just use carb cleaner sparingly up here and down inside there. And then I'll probably use some simple green. Then there's also like this purple version of the simple green to scrub some of the linkage and just clean it up a little bit, wipe some of this yellowing and stuff off. I don't know, some people like to leave that, but I've decided that I will do cleaning, but no more. All right. All right, here's kind of a before and after shot. You can see I've got this back carburetor cleaned up. Again, didn't go crazy, just got the dirt and the grease off. All of this is rust coming through this paint, so that's all just staying there. And we're just gonna do the rest of them. I cleaned all down in here, got this tube cleaned out. There was some soot in here, so you can see how that's a nice shiny wall now. A little soot over there. Just got a bunch of grease cleaned out of here. See, there's some more in there. So we'll just clean that up, nice and neat, nothing more. All right, we're all cleaned up. And you can see I've just gently wiped off the dirt and heavy grease and stuff from everywhere under here, because it's a little more accessible right now. Later on, after we get the car running and driving, I'll probably go back to detailing, and that'll probably be my stress relief for the rest of my life, because I do like to come out here and just pick away at things a little bit. Although it's nerve-wracking, because I'm always worried I'm going to flake off a little piece of paint or something. And see down here, you can see they did no type of prep work on these aluminum undershields at all. They just sprayed them with this black satin paint. So up in there, yeah, I don't know if I can get my hand in there, but see over here, you can see oil caked in there, probably from some oil changes. And I don't have the original little oil cover that goes down in this hole here, but I'm sure I've got some originals at the shop, so maybe I'll stick one on there. But anyway, that's probably just spillage from an oil change. So there we go. See, we got a little, again, there's no prep here either. It's all just sprayed black. So we're getting just a little bit of surface rust coming through there. But that's all just exactly how it is. So it's time to go ahead and start reassembling. I'll put the jets in first from the bottom, and then we'll work on the top. Okay, I'm putting things back together now, and it's proving to be very difficult upside down with this little diaphragm spring in there. And so what I've done is I've taken a very strong duct tape and I've pulled this together, put the screws in there to make sure everything's lined up properly. And then I can take the screws out and go ahead and stick this whole assembly up in there and then put the screws in. It was not working otherwise. And I already did one like this and it worked great. And then I just pulled the duct tape off. So that's how we're doing this, in case you're wondering. Okay, mission accomplished. They're all back together. I did not lose or break a single part, at least permanently. I lost a little spring that goes on this jet adjusting screw down here. It took me about half an hour to find that. And then I lost one of the little original cotter pins down here for the choke linkage under there, but I got that all taken care of. I found it. So anyway, we are all good to go. The choke now works fine. The jets are all in there. We've got new jets and the diaphragms on the bottom of them. I put a new needle and seat in every bowl, and I put a new little fiber washer under here, but I left the original gasket here. And then all of these washers are original. They're the aluminum washers. I think they'll be just fine. And you can see how these plastic pieces here wear off and turn white like this, but this one here almost seems different. It almost looks newer, but they may have just been mixing and matching. I don't know. I see that kind of often too. So there you go. It's all back together and we're ready for the next step. I've got to clean this out here. I'll take that apart and clean it all up. And then you can also see that I made a big mess over here. I've got just about every cleaning solution possible out there, but all my little trays are empty and all I'm left with is just the little pieces. That's all I replaced in each carb: the jet, the diaphragm, the needle, this spring, and the needle and seat there. So the carburetors are done. I'm very pleased with how they turned out. Very clean, they look good, but there's still plenty of patina on there. All right, we're all done with the carburetors, and I'm a little wary of what the inside of the fuel pump might look like now. So I'm just gonna move on and go ahead and clean this out now. And I'm gonna try to clean out that metal line. That's a one-piece line that goes all the way back under the car to here. And then this goes up here into the SU fuel pump, which is just your basic SU fuel pump that a lot of British cars have. And then it comes out of there and goes over into here. Now, we already cleaned out the gas tank last spring, so that's all clean in there. But the darkening of this line, it would seem like the plastic has darkened, but I think there's actually some dark fuel in there. And then I don't know the condition of the fuel pump, and I'm worried it might be a little gummed up like some of those float bowls were. So I'm going to just go ahead and pop that out of there, check everything, and try to clean out these lines, and then just put it right back in. All right, so let's take a look at that. Okay, I've got the fuel pump out and I've got all those hoses out, and I cleaned up these banjo bolts, and these lines had some old gas in it. It's a shame I don't have smell-o-vision on here because it stinks. I had to open up the doors and the windows. But I cleaned this all out the best I could. I'll probably flush that with some good gas. There was nothing coagulated or gummy in there. It was just old fluid gas. So that's all good. When I pull the fuel pump out, I can see, first of all, I did hook some wires up to it. It didn't do anything. Nothing. So, and now I can see, if you look down here on this little pinch bolt, you can see some stuff around the edge that shows that it looks like this has been out before. And if you remember, that side boot board was off on this side, and I thought there might be something going on with this. So I'm not really surprised to see that. So I guess I'm going to start digging into this and see what I can come up with. I'd like to be able to salvage and reuse this pump. I want to keep everything original to this car on there, so let's see what we can find. Okay, I've got this apart. Before we get to that part, let's just take a look at this. This is where the points are, and let's get the focus here. The points are right in here. And you can see they're a little crusty, so that might be part of the problem. But then down here, this is the diaphragm. That is not looking too good either. So I assume we're going to have to order up a rebuild kit for this and then just go all out on it. So for you guys, probably 3 seconds from now, the rebuild kit will be sitting here in the video. But for me, it's probably going to be a week and a half. So stay tuned. All right, I've set the fuel pump aside, and now I've got the fuel filter, little sediment bowl thing out. It's just a little dirty, and you can see there's the original gasket, and there's a screen up in the top. We used to sell these little push-on filters that went on here, but it looks like originally they had this screen. And then there's some crud in there, so I'm going to take this out and just clean it up a little bit and put it back together. Okay, I was able to get that pretty clean. I wasn't able to get this thing out of here. I started to try, and I did not put that little dent in there. But I started to try, and this is really kind of pressed on one way. So I just cleaned it up the best I could with some carb cleaner, and that worked out pretty well. This gasket here is rock hard, so that's going to have to be replaced. And then here's the bowl. Here, it had bad gas in it. Get that cleaned up next.
All right, I think tonight I'm going to try to go ahead and rebuild this fuel pump. I mean, it's been like a month since I messed with this, maybe even longer. But I did get the official SU kit, and there's the instructions, and here's all this stuff. And so I feel like I should be able to pull this off. I'm a little nervous about pulling these things out. He's got this real fine little diaphragm and all. But I'm going to go ahead and just do exactly what it says to do on the instructions and see how we go. And then if I end up screwing it up, I've got a complete unit here from a 68 Roadster. I tried it. It doesn't work. So we can try again. Okay, we are stealing a little battery power from the 67 2+2. There's a Leaf. Drive this car all the time. And we're going to take it out later today too. All right, I have rebuilt it, and I'll just be honest, I already tested it and it worked, and I'm excited, but I'm going to be just as excited again. You ready? Okay, so I've got the electric portion of the pump fixed. I put the cap piece on. It's kind of a Bakelite, and I kept what was left of that SU sticker on there. And then there's a rubber band around here, and then there's some black electrical tape. If you look at this other pump here from a 68, that's kind of how that looks. See, that one's never been opened, so all of that stuff is still intact. But this one here, in order to keep the original pump, we had to open it and rebuild it. So I've just put that back together as best it can be. Now, I can't show it to you better because I keep picking this thing up, and these little brass spacers keep falling out, and I've had to pick them up off the floor multiple times. So we'll just let that sit there. I'm now going to rebuild this body part here where the actual fuel flows through. I was going to leave this alone, but I don't think there's any chance of it not leaking. You see here, this seal looks like a little flat square rubber seal, but it's actually supposed to be an O-ring. And so I'm worried I'll get some leakage there, and I might as well just go ahead. One thing that's really nice is that the SU kits, they're not cheap, but see, they come in a nice little box here. So they got nice little wrappers and stuff, but the parts are absolutely identical. And so these are these little pieces that go in here. I thought they were different, but those little 3-hole ring pieces are actually little caps. So what's under there is exactly the same as that. And then this little piece here is in this bag. I don't want to screw it up, but you can see it's got like a little domed shape to it. And then there's the O-ring. I'm a little messy right now. I don't know where this screen goes. I think it goes underneath one of these, and I'll see that when I take it apart. So I'm a little reluctant to pop those out, but I think it's going to be okay. Okay, things are coming apart okay. There is the screen down in there, and that is actually on the inlet side, so that makes sense. Okay, well, I skipped a couple steps, but the pump is together and back in there. And all the bolts and all the banjo fittings and everything are exactly where they were, even though somebody did have this out at one point. If you look, there's kind of a funny little mark here in the paint where it looks like somebody had a piece of adhesive tape on there maybe when it was painted.
and then they peeled that off, which is kind of an interesting little mark. All right, so the fuel pump is ready to go.